pushing the wrong side. That could be the problem. Okay, this is an open public meeting. It has been so advertised. And I'll ask Mrs. Coleman to call the roll.
Mrs. Riley? Mrs. Boppel? Mrs. Butchko?
Here.
Mr. Tavy's not here. Mrs. Ezekiel? Mrs. Marmion?
Here.
Mr. Schaefer?
Here.
Mr. Stoss?
Here. Okay, I ask you to stand for the flag salute. Flag's in the back of the room. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, there is no executive session tonight, so we'll move on to presentations. There are no presentations tonight. Is there a motion to go into committee of the whole?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, we're now on the committee of the whole. Any topics anybody wants to talk about? No? Let's talk about anything? I can't believe that. There's something on my agenda. Oh, this little fine print here. Okay. Mask mandates. Okay, what do you want to talk about on mask mandates? Anyone? Okay, I'll start. The governor has decreed that we can, or that masks are no longer mandatory as far as the state is concerned, effective March 7th. The individual districts now make their own decision as to whether or not they want to have them. Any decisions made either to discontinue mandatory masks or to have mandatory masks is not necessarily the end of the issue. I mean, it can be changed at any point in time. If we decide to go without masks and there's a spike in a month, we can come back and require that masks be worn at all times. If the decision is to continue masks in another month, we can decide that it's no longer, excuse me, it was no longer necessary, and we can eliminate it at that point in time. If the decision is to eliminate masks, there's no magic to March 7th. It can be March 8th, but it could also be March 15th. It could be March 31st. It could be August 1st. So there's no magic to that. So with that, how do you all feel?
I trust the superintendent to make the decision since that's what they've been doing the whole time. They're the ones that have more data than we do in front of us. They know what's going on in the schools and outside, and I trust what they make the recommendation.
Okay, well, fortunately or unfortunately, the superintendent will make a recommendation, maybe. But the final decision is the board's. That you have to say yes or no. You agree with him or you disagree with him. So, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So good evening, everyone. So in terms of the scope, just want to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of the environment. As a county, and we know that boroughs and townships within the county are variable. So we know that for an absolute fact. But the data that we're currently looking at looks at the county level, looks at the regional level, and then looks at the national level, and leverages guidance both at the county, at the state, at the federal government, with technical assistance and advisory from local pediatricians, school nurses, pediatric nurses, board members, teachers, administrators, and district personnel. We all met today, and some of the topic of discussion that we talked about was that last week, when the announcement came, the governor shared that there would be forthcoming guidance. The state delayed said guidance. We received a message last night that the state was convening a meeting with superintendents across the state on Thursday afternoon. Currently, the CDC has not changed their guidance in terms of expectations. specifically as it relates to areas of high or very high transmission. The latest COVID activity level index report for our region, which is the Southwest region, indicates that we are still in high status. Whereas the recommendation from both at the state and federal level is to maintain a universal masking environment. However, we are currently trending down. We fully expect that within the next 10, probably 14 days to be in moderate status. And what we discussed today was should we shift to that moderate status, we would reconvene and we would feel more comfortable shifting to a mask optional policy after we had worked out the logistics about what that means, because currently the quarantine and isolation guidance and rules have not changed. And our core goal, as stated at the beginning of the year, is to keep students and staff safe and to keep schools open. Without the mask provision, students and classrooms fall under the most restrictive option. What that means is, in an example, is if you've got a student that tests positive in a classroom where students are unmasked, every single child in that space that is unmasked, that is not fully vaccinated, would have to quarantine for a minimum of 5 days. So what we have been trying to do is we've been trying to reduce our level of risk while also creating additional options. One of the things that we're currently working on, which would give us more confidence in moving into a mask optional policy, is we just received a confirmation and approval at the end of last week from our testing vendor that we will be able to begin with a test to stay program the week of February 28th. We're still working on those logistics. What this allows us to do is to minimize our risk by keeping kids in school regardless of the masked or unmasked environment. But we still have a lot of work to do in order to work through what those logistics look like. We also have to be mindful, we are not ready to make a formal recommendation for the board to consume because we've been promised guidance, specific guidance, both at the state level and at the federal level, and we don't necessarily want to get out ahead and do all of the work and then the state come back and pull a fast one and force us to have to pivot again. We believe that would be very confusing. We also want to remain consistent with what our collective districts have done for the last 2 years. We have been very thoughtful, very intentional based on the leadership both here in Oaklyn as well as in Collingswood. We have adhered to the science, but we've also been very clear that we cannot pivot at the drop of a hat as suggested in the news media or when the county says that we've gotten the all clear. Generally, their guidance comes at the last minute, and it comes as a shock without any precursor or any heads up, and schools and districts have to pivot. In order to keep students safe, in order to keep staff safe, in order to maintain the integrity of the academics within schools, currently we believe that the existing measures make the most sense, but we do realize and acknowledge that things can change pretty quickly. In a best case scenario, if we move and shift into a moderate status, we believe that's a game changer, and some of the mitigation strategies can be significantly scaled back. We've already scaled back asymptomatic testing because we shifted out of very high status. So currently, the only children and staff that we are testing are the 41 student athletes because they are unvaccinated and they are in close contact for extended periods of time, and our staff per the executive order from the governor. So we are no longer doing asymptomatic testing in order to make space and room for families, especially our younger families of children who are either not vaccinated or too young to be vaccinated, who have been subject to continued isolation and quarantine based on their close contact status. So we believe that a continued layer of mitigation will help us to get as close to normal as possible, with the understanding is that we don't want to keep these masks on any longer than we have to, but we also want to reduce the number of variables that are contributing to our inability to maintain a continuity of instructional services to students without being burdened by having to shut down multiple classrooms or even having to shut down schools. For the public's view, we have had 5 schools be flagged by the Department of Health as a confirmed outbreak. What that means is that the state, once they confirm that your school has had an outbreak, without having a multiple layered approach to mitigation, the Department of Health can shut down your school for 10 to 14 days. Because we have multiple layers of prevention in all of our schools, the Department of Health declined in shutting each of those schools down and encouraged us to stay the course until the guidance had changed. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to strike a balance between what the guidance says and ultimately what makes the most sense for Oaklyn and ultimately Collingswood. We do realize that the board is in a challenging position. We realize that the school is in a challenging position. And we realize, more specifically, parents are in an extremely challenged position. So this evening, what we would be seeking is additional time in order to collect the data to be able to bring back to the board the actual guidance from the state. But where we're trending, we believe that in the near future that a mask optional policy would definitely be warranted.
Can I ask a question? In the scenario that you described where if masks are optional but the isolation guidance has not changed, who is keeping track of what kids in a 19 to 22 kid classroom had a mask on all day, didn't? Will parents have to sign waivers? I mean, it just feels like a lot that we'll be putting on the teachers, and then how, it seems like it could be a lot. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
So currently, both of our districts have been depending extremely heavily on the Angel staff members called school nurses. Without our nurses, we would be in a very different position. So our nurses currently have been doing all of the contact tracing, all of the communications for families, all of the record keeping, establishment of return dates, and primary contact and liaison for the Department of Health. For every case, for every close contact, every isolation and every quarantine. As a result of the continued evolution of the virus, the strategies, the often confusing guidance coming from the state and the federal government, we work together to use grant funds in order to identify a lead nurse that could provide targeted technical assistance to all nurses in Collingswood and Oaklyn and assist with some of the record keeping, but it's a lot. So in that particular scenario, it would be a combination of the two. The staff that are in the room, the school nurse, they would have to figure out who is or is not masked in that environment, paired with who is or is not fully vaccinated, and determine who would be deemed a close contact. And then would have to notify those families of that status.
So just kind of some personal thoughts. I understand obviously we're waiting on more guidance, we're waiting on some more direction, and there are variables at play with the Department of Health. But one thing that hasn't changed, and a lot has changed with COVID, but one thing that's remained constant is the science behind masking, and it's not that effective. If we're looking at masks truly being effective, we know that it's got to be an N95. It has to be properly fitted. Properly fitted goes through extreme testing. Over and over again, they do tests, they spray things, make sure you can't smell it, taste it, to know that it's properly sealed, properly fitting. At that, you've got X amount of hours at best. That's how masking is most effective. What we've been doing now is something that's been compliant. It is a added layer. We are following the guidelines, but the masking has not truly been following the science because the science of masking has been clear. That again, unless it's meeting N95, properly fitted, so many hours, basically what we're doing is just something that maybe makes us feel better. I know we want to make the right decision. I know we are all, as a board, sincere in making the right decision. Politics has played in a lot with all of this, and while it may correlate with our decision, I know as a board I can speak for us that it won't be the cause of our decision. But I firmly believe that we have the science, we know the science, we do not need to wait for further guidance or advice. I believe when March 7th rolls around, it is time to unmask, and I would urge the board to strongly consider that.
So just one point of clarification. Thank you, Todd. So To some degree, I agree with your statement, with a few exceptions. So the CDC guidance in terms of masks, there are different layers of masks based on levels of risk and exposure. So in an environment where you're working in a medical or a congregate medical facility, you are absolutely correct. The N95 is the preferred mask or respirator when you are dealing with immunocompromised patients or individuals who are COVID positive. Doctors, when they are not working directly with COVID patients or the uniform masking policy are surgical masks. Cloth masks have been used by children because they provide a layer of protection. Most of our children are not COVID positive. So to that we all agree. Most of our children, there is a reduced risk as it relates to that. The challenge that we have with the masks is that right now the guidance is heavily dependent on that as one of several strategies. When we remove a layer, we subject our students and our families to the scrutiny of the full weight of the guidance, which sometimes leans to a more restrictive and more oppressive measure. So I would just caution us in being too hastily. I hate this thing, to be perfectly honest. I hate the mask. But I also don't want our children to be exposed to unnecessary quarantines and additional treatment as a result of us removing this mask. So I just wanted to put that out there.
If I may, I think the parents know their children the best, and I think that down the line we have to allow the parents to make the decision as to whether their children are going to wear the masks or not. There are all kinds of reasons which we don't know as to why parents feel that children should wear their masks or not. And once this opens up, and Todd's right, the whole situation with the CDC is right, I think you have to let the parents make a conscious decision and understand the consequences, both directions, of what may happen. But I really think that when it comes down to it now, it's a matter of parental choice. What do you feel the most comfortable with your child, knowing your situation and your circumstances, both in the school and at home, maybe with elderly parents, maybe with someone who might be compromised, and you have to understand that that's another issue that people will have to play in face with. But so giving them choice allows them to make the decision. And I understand where the CDC is coming from. I understand where you're coming from, where you are, but I still think it boils down. Parents have to make a decision, and that's what we're here for.
I just want to comment on that. I agree with your sentiment, but if there's plenty of parents too who feel that they don't want to put their kids in an environment that doesn't have masks for whatever their personal reasons are, and by taking away one, now you're taking the choice away from the other. The other thing too is that you see, if you have a mask mandate across the board, then you have the layer that you're talking about that hopefully prevents the need for extra quarantines or schools. But people aren't going to like this, but you actually have more of an equal standing instead of, oh, well, that kid still wears it. That kid doesn't wear it. Why doesn't he wear it? And there's a whole other layer of a social thing to it that really can mess with, maybe not as much the younger kids, I don't know, but in general, I mean, you see it in businesses and stuff, and that's why a lot of businesses are saying across the board, this is the way to do it, because you don't want to point out the difference for everything. It's easier to say, this is a protective layer. It's not imperfect, we know that, but it's one more caution. I mean, we don't walk around in a bubble, but we do things to protect ourselves normally without masks. It's the same idea, in my opinion.
I agree with Todd. To me, at this point, it's 100% parental choice. You know the risks if you decide not to wear a mask. Talk about quarantines and everything else. The people are taking that responsibility on themselves as parents. You know your child best. Some children can wear a mask all day and they have no issue whatsoever. Other kids cannot. And it's at a point now where, some parents aren't sending their kids to school for this reason because they don't want their children masked all day. As far as kids pointing other kids out, saying, well, they're not masked, that's up to the parent to sit down and discuss. I discuss everything with my 8-year-old. I mean, fortunately, she's very mature for her age. But we go over all this stuff. What we do as a family might be different from what someone else does as a family. We respect that. We're not pointing people out and making them, they're different or odd, whatever like that, because they are or not. They are wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, you know. We choose to do what we do as a family. Others choose to do what they want to do. The majority of kids are wearing cloth masks, which have been shown to be completely ineffective. That's everywhere out there in the media. On top of the fact that, you know, it's basically been said, I spoke to someone who runs a center, an ABA center, and they were told by the county health department that 15 minutes in a room with the regular cloth masks and stuff that people are wearing, they're completely ineffective after 15 minutes. So unless you have on a proper mask, they're not doing anything anymore. Besides making a lot of children uncomfortable, children having speech issues are increasing. I can't even imagine the mental health. I don't wear these things. I hate this thing. And I can't imagine having it on all day. You know, my husband works at a hospital. He wears it all day. He hates it. You know, and he's an adult. I can't imagine what these kids are going through at this point. We have to, at some point, resume normalcy. We have to. This waiting for guidance, there are so many other districts already that have decided to go mask optional. So I wonder what they decided to make that decision, why we are still waiting, what guidance. You know, this red, orange, green, yellow, all this other stuff. It's, to me, at this point, it's insanity. It truly is. If you want to get vaccinated, it's a point now where everyone over the age of 5 can get vaccinated. You have that choice. So why we're all still hiding and doing this whole COVID thing at this point, it's just, I don't understand it. I really don't. And this nonstop guidance from the CDC, the WHO says one thing, you know, New Jersey's doing another thing, Murphy's saying one thing, then another. It's just, you know, it's crazy. Like he said, a lot of politics have gotten involved in it, and at this point, it's like, enough. You know, these kids should be able to go to school without a mask on. And if you want to send your kid to school with a mask, fantastic. You can do that. No one's stopping you. You know, if you're uncomfortable, throw 2 masks on. You know, I mean that seriously, if that's where you're at with that. But my guess is if people are that fearful of being in an environment without a mask, most likely that child is vaccinated also because of the fear they have. So if they're vaccinated and they're wearing a mask, I'm not understanding the fear at this point where the risk is. Okay?
Just a note, Amy, that, and just for whatever it's worth, the Oaklyn school is a 31% vaccination rate for the kids. So the majority of the kids are not vaccinated for some reason. I'm honestly disappointed in that. There's only one school in Collingswood that has a worse vaccination rate than Oaklyn.
But the thing is with that, you know, you may not understand that, and you know, for a lot of parents, there are no long-term studies right now with that. No one knows what the long-term results are going to be of that vaccine. So some parents want to wait on that, and I totally respect that and support that. The thing is, though, if you do want to get that, my whole point is those, you know, someone pointed out they're afraid to have their children in an environment where masks aren't there. Chances are that child, of that parent who has that fear, vaccinated their child. If their child's vaccinated and they're wearing a mask, I'm sorry, at this point it's like, it seems crazy. I don't understand it.
True.
I'm not seeing the logic behind it, you know? The options are there. No one's saying you can't wear a mask. No one's saying you can't get vaccinated. You know, once you have those 2 layers of protection, boosters and all this other stuff are out there, you know, chances are people will be boosting every 6 months to a year with this thing. Okay, great. That's what you decide to do.
Yeah, it's like your flu shot. I can remember, you talk about long-term studies, I can remember getting the polio vaccine in the 1950s. There was no long-term study about the effects of the polio vaccine at that point in time. But, you know, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you feel about it, I'm still here.
Yeah, and they changed it. The polio vaccine changed over the years. Is that
Yeah,
the same one
well,
as that you got?
Yeah, but you know, it's a case where you can't wait 20 or 30 years to find out whether or not there's going to be any kind of a side effect. If you do, the vaccine is worthless. There's no sense having it.
The problem is, though, not to get in the whole vaccine thing, people are still getting COVID, spreading COVID. I had a family member die of
True.
COVID who was fully vaccinated. So the effectiveness, the whole point is the vaccine is not going to stop anything. It may prevent you from getting COVID bad. It may not. I have brought up to, you know,
In my
Dr.
case, it's
McDowell
at least
before.
psychological. I feel better.
Well, exactly.
It may be
Exactly,
completely
you feel
worthless,
better, right? But you know, but the whole thing there is, like I said before, antibody testing. I've brought this up before. I feel like if we're going to talk about being protected in this environment, we need to look at, instead of treating everyone unvaccinated, vaccinated, treating people.
True. Okay.
Yeah, just a couple of, no, go ahead.
A question about the vaccination rate. Is that K and up, or is that
That's
include
K to
pre-K?
5.
That's K to 5.
Yes.
It's 31%.
31%.
As of when?
As of, I don't know when.
Last week.
Okay.
Okay.
Todd, you, oh, Rich, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, just a couple quick points. I agree with, the designation between vaccinated versus unvaccinated or a student who's had it. The finer points of those policies, they'll go above our capacity to decide, right? That's typically the thing that comes down from the state. One of the things I just wanted to make a note of as well is to piggyback off of Dr. McDowell in terms of upcoming guidance. One of the areas where masks would still be required, regardless of what we decide, would be day 6 through 10, if I'm correct, for students who return back to the building. So I don't know if you can speak to that piece a little bit more as well.
Right. So regardless of the universal mask mandates, when students, so we shifted based on the guidance and based on the recommendations from our public health advisory, we shifted to a universal 5-day quarantine period and isolation period because of the impact that it was having on families. So there were 3 different policies: one for preschool, one for students that were close contact, one for students that were isolated. But then when we actually looked at the science, we ended up in consultation between the boards and school and district personnel, we made the decision for there to be more consistency that was less confusing. When it comes to the return date, there are still rules around the day 6 through 10 students that come back around the masking. So even in an environment where masks are optional, what you now the schools are now going to continually be subject to is what Therese mentioned earlier, is the record keeping about who's on first, who's on second. Students that would come back due to their COVID status, returning from being COVID positive, would still need to be fully masked day 6 through 10. The students that were close contact would not need to be on day 6 through 10. So you would have different tiers of students, some with masks, some without masks. How do you keep track of all of that without, throwing your hands up and just shutting down the classroom every single time? So what we're trying to do, and I completely agree, we as 2 independent but connected districts, we made the decisions that regardless, we were not going to politicize vaccines. We were going to simply provide a service. So we are hosting vaccine clinics, not because we're casting a value judgment on who. We're providing a service for families who want to choose that option by making it local, by removing the inability for them to have access to that provision. In terms of the test to say, we're trying to remove a barrier that is preventing some of our children, regardless of their situation. We're trying to remove the barrier that's preventing them from coming to school due to close contact exposure. So when we look at the volume of children that have contracted COVID, it's about 400 children between our 2 districts that have been COVID positive. It's closer to 1,000 that have been deemed close contact so far this year. So when we look at the damage and the impact of the number of children that are affected, we're not talking about small numbers, we're talking about significant impact. And what we're simply trying to do is we're trying to create an environment to allow for a continuity of instruction and not be so heavily dependent on COVID continuing to interrupt our ability to move forward. So regardless of the decisions that persist or do not, we just want to put back in the safe operation of schools in the back of our minds, regardless of our personal beliefs, our personal opinions. I think that every person in here and every person watching cares deeply about their children and about their family, so that is unquestioned. And we all reserve the right to believe and feel however we believe and feel, with no judgment. So we're not here to cast a judgment on what people believe, what they don't believe, what science they subscribe to, or what science they don't. We as a school district are operating under an unrealistic constraint, and we're just trying to mitigate and balance that based on the guidance and the feedback that we're receiving from the different entities that govern schools, paired with the needs of our school community.
I also wanted to bring up to the board, I know this is an ongoing discussion. One of the things that we talked about in recent meetings was the assessments, what's been going on with kids' grades. Honestly, I know that everybody's heart is in the right place, but if our school shuts down, I think that's more traumatic than a kid sitting with a mask on for 8 hours. I think it's more traumatic to families. I think it's more traumatic to the kids long term, to the staff. And I think that we as a board need to keep in mind all of these scenarios that could take place by every small and large decision that we make.
Yeah, along those lines, I would say my priority is, as a board member, is keeping kids in school. And if that means wearing masks so that they do not, if the vaccination rate is 31%, which is pretty low, then that's a lot of close contacts that would have to quarantine if they're unmasked. So I'm just wondering if you can share a little bit more about the Test to Stay program, what that would look like, what the timeline is, if there is a close contact and they're unvaccinated. So thank you.
So the way that the Test to Stay program, so we've been authorized to implement a Test to Stay. So if a student, say the student on Monday, you receive a call that the child is a close contact. Well, Tuesday morning, that family would be able to drive up to the high school, which is where our testing center is, before school started, receive a test that we pay for, and as long as that child stays negative, they need to test every other day, and they go to school. They don't have to quarantine. This is only for students deemed close contact and students who are asymptomatic. So what we're trying to do as best we can is we're trying to offer families choices. Families don't have to choose to participate in the program. It's just another option for us to keep kids in school as much as possible.
So I know there's been kind of a lot to consider and digest in our discussion, and I think it's been a good discussion. I also know that March 7th, I believe, is the date that the governor set, which is also before our will go into effect before our next board meeting. So I may have to just defer procedurally here, but if we can, I'd like to motion to take a vote on the mask requirement, since the easing of the mandate will go into effect before our next board meeting.
Okay, I think that's a good idea, but I'd like to hear from all these people that are sitting out here that obviously have an opinion, whether it's pro or con. So if we could, we're going to
Sorry,
open it up now,
what would we be voting on exactly?
either to maintain the mask mandate or to not maintain the mask mandate.
Before March 7th?
No, since March 7th, it will be before our next board meeting that we have a vote now. So when March 7th comes, at least we've.
That I understand, the superintendent has asked for more, and administration have asked for more time between now and March 7th. I would prefer to have a special meeting after there's a meeting happening on Thursday. I don't feel comfortable voting for something like that tonight. I don't feel like I have, as a board member, enough information.
I agree.
Okay, now,
I agree too. There's not enough information. We have to get together again. This is far more important than getting it in by a certain date or whatever.
okay, but I'm going to listen to all these people first. So at this point, we'll open up the floor for discussion. It's the same rules. At this point in time, I'd like you to keep it to the mask mandate, either pro or con. Come up to the microphone, give us your name and address, and keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. And we'll hear what you have to say.
I'm sorry, just 1 second. We have a procedural. You need to
Yeah.
come out of committee of the whole, and then we need to add a third public session section to the agenda.
Why do we need to come out of the committee of the whole?
You guys are done discussing. Now you're asking for public comment, which is separate than
and
committee
we're
of the
still
whole.
discussing it.
But we're still in the committee of the whole. You can't. gotta come
You
out of
don't have a
committee of the whole.
conversation. is what
Okay,
I'm trying
I
to
don't
tell you.
agree, but is there a motion to come out of the committee of the whole?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, done. Now, can we skip to blank page? Can we skip to section 7, public comment at this point in time? And then we'll revert back to section 5 when we come out.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Jim Genther Senior, live at 148 West Park Avenue. Short and sweet. Well, thank you all for what you're doing. Short and sweet. I think it should be mask optional. If the parents don't want their kids to wear a mask, the kids shouldn't have to wear a mask. If the kids want to wear a mask, then they can. That's plain and simple. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Brett Baloney, 229 Manheim Ave. So my first grader, I'll just give you example. The other night we're going over sight words, and now they're getting bigger, and I'm going over with her, I'm looking at her, and she's trying to sound them out. And I'm like, how can the teacher help her learn to read if she can't see her, her mouth expressions? So I'm like, and that's when me and my wife were talking, and I'm like, yeah, these masks got to go, you know what I mean? She can't even read. I mean, I get she's in first grade, but she should be reading by now, I would think. I mean, we do our best at home as we can, but, coming to school and she's wearing that mask all day, how can she express what she's trying to say to her teacher, you know what I mean? How can the teacher teach? And same with my sixth grader. She's texts us every day by like noon, Mom, come pick me up. Dad, come pick me up. I have a headache. So I'm wearing the mask all day. It's in fact, she was an honor student. Now she's lucky she's, passing now. So, like the mask for me, they got to go because my kids are definitely suffering. And to add is like Mr. Stotts. I know your granddaughter goes to private school. I don't want to put you on the spot. But I know your son's going to have that option, March 7th. And same thing for you too, Rich. Your daughter's going to have that. You're going to, as a parent, going to have that option. So I'm going to hope that you two, vote, along with me and these other parents, you know what I mean, to make the mask optional because your families can have it, you know what I mean, and so do us. All right? Thanks.
Thank you. You're assuming all these people are on your side, Brett. Anyone else? Oh, okay.
Emily Ivy, 216 Reading Ave, Oaklyn. My daughter, I would like masking to be optional. I think it should be every parent's decision. My daughter is having headaches. I keep having to buy bottles of ibuprofen. She can't, in gym, you're making it so that she can't pull her mask down in gym now. She's getting more headaches. I tell her, she says I pull it down and, they don't say anything. So that means that the teachers don't even see this as feasible. We go to parties. Some kids wear masks. Some kids don't. Most places I go, kids are not wearing masks, and I think that should be our option in school because I'm getting concerned about her headaches. She didn't have it before. So now she has to wear it to dance. She has to wear it to school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Kelly Fadigan, 307 West Oakland Ave. I have a preschooler. He's exceptionally brilliant. for his age. But I do notice he has trouble sometimes articulating words because he can't see mouths and the enunciation of words. I think masking should be optional. I think we need to take a page from history, and we need to learn to live with this. It's not going away. We just need to progress forward and make it the parents' option. We as parents know what's best for our child, and in my opinion and in my household, we don't feel masks are currently moving forward the best option. So I hope that everyone really does a little bit of soul searching and makes the best vote based on what's best for their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Saw that.
Yeah, beat him to it. Hi, I'm Laura Patrick. I live at 201 Kendall Boulevard, and I am for optional. I have 3 daughters in Oakland Public School. My youngest is in preschool, and she just said to me the other day, she said, "Mommy, I hate wearing a mask to school." Like, unprompted, just walked up to me and said it, and like, that breaks my heart. My other girls, well, my middle daughter, Scarlett, is in 1st grade, and that's all she's known, too, is a mask in school, and it's sad. And I'm lucky that she's decently smart because she's not struggling. But then I have a daughter in 5th grade who, she comes home from school every day and is miserable. I can only imagine that the masks add to her agitation, besides hormones. And she's on a 3rd grade reading level. She's in 5th grade. And COVID has done her no favors. It has only hindered her ability to do anything better. And I just feel like what we're missing is we want to put masks on to make everybody feel better, but what's happening is our kids are suffering in so many other ways that we're not putting that above this. And like he said, the facts on our masks, they show that they don't even really work, but our kids are isolated. That's also shown. Studies come out, these kids are lonely. They have anxiety like they've never had before. They're afraid. At some point, we have to start like really taking care of our kids and getting back to normalcy for the sake of our kids, for the sake of their mental health. That's not one thing. I didn't hear really anybody say that tonight. It was all about the masks and the vaccinations and the quarantine time, but what about their mental health? Because it is happening. They are suffering. So really take that into consideration when you make your choice.
Thank you.
Brian Patrick, 201 Kendall, along with her. Again, thanks for all you guys for what you're doing. Dr. McDowell, I have a question for you. What school of the elementary schools has the lowest COVID rate of all the schools yet? Like the lowest amount of cases? Yeah, elementary school. Which school has the lowest vaccination rate?
Which school?
Yes. I would like to know, like, the school that has the lowest COVID cases. We always see the one that has the most. I want to know the one that has the least. And I'd bet it was the same school. We need to do something to take care of our kids. We need to take care of them, do the right thing. It's been long enough, and, you know, our daughter's falling behind and stuff, and you said it before. If one kid falls behind, isn't that too many? Do the right thing, guys.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brooke DeRue. I live on 208 Reading Avenue. Let's see, I had written a whole big thing, but talking about wearing masking, the only reason why it came up is because Murphy decided to change his mind. And that's only because President Biden had a whole bunch of Democratic governors go to Washington, D.C. and discuss about mask mandates and how to drop them, because they were realizing that polls were dropping in for Democrats because they were looking bad. So they figured they better do something to make themselves look better. I'd be very careful about which agencies you're listening to, The CDC has been labeled as being corrupt and manipulative. You have you also have the teachers union, who is also demanding things. They want to keep masks on because they don't want to be they're so afraid of that they're going to get COVID that they're going to die, and they're manipulating things. So I'd be very careful. You say about being tested for COVID. What testing are they using? Are they still using the old ones that they were using before? The creator of the PCR test has admitted that these things do not work. They pick up the smallest little thing. People have viruses in their body, natural viruses in their body that can pick it up. It can't tell the difference between a cold, a virus, and COVID. So, and you're going by these, you're going by these false positive tests. This is just something we're going to have to live with and get over it. Enough is enough. We got to get rid of the mask. We got to forget all about the COVID stuff and just live. So I'm very much against masking. I have 2 disabled children, and it's not helping them out one bit. One has epilepsy, and thank goodness he hasn't been having any seizures because of his mask being on. And I just think you should look at the other side of the coin. You've only heard the propaganda from the government. You've only heard it from the president, from the governor, from local town people. They're all saying the same exact thing. Narrative, what they've been taught. Same with doctors and nurses. They've been told the same exact thing. If it wasn't for the whistleblowing nurses and doctors coming out, telling exactly what's happening in the hospitals, telling exactly what's been going on, how they've been paid under the table, how they've been told to make sure that the COVID numbers are up so that we keep people afraid. So I'm just saying, look at the other side before you make any decisions on what you're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Ivy from 216 Reading Avenue, Oaklyn. So fear is a powerful thing. It can drive you to do the right things, but it can also drive you to do the wrong things. Me personally, I was the guinea pig to get the vaccine for my family, and I got sick twice and was hospitalized twice 2 weeks after each vaccine shot. I'm more athletic than most people, and I do high-intensity endurance sports, and those are what caused the reactions that I have never had from those. So majority of the people may not have those reactions, but it's called rhabdo, and it can put you in kidney failure, and there's literature on it that you can get that from COVID or the vaccine. So I'd imagine for some kids that's a possibility to happen. I am for no masks anymore. My kids come home, they never wear a mask. They don't wear masks to go out with hundreds of other kids at skate parties and all of this stuff. They both had COVID. They were both sick for 5 days, and they're fine. They never had a fever more than 100 degrees, 99 to 100 degrees. We live in a small house here in Oaklyn. We have one bathroom, and my wife and I didn't catch the COVID, but both kids had it. None of it makes any sense. Plus, you speak about the test. You're obviously doing the rapid test, right? So a client of mine's a doctor, and she said that the actual accuracy of the test, if it comes up negative, there is a 50% chance that you could still have COVID. If it does come up positive, it's 70% chance that it's accurate. So it's more accurate when it comes up positive than it is when it comes up negative. So how does that really help keep somebody from coming back into school, you know, it's a 30%, not even a 20% difference in accuracy. Doesn't make any sense. You know, the vaccines do not stop you from catching it and transmitting it to somebody else. It does keep you from possibly getting sicker, but if you're vaccinated and going into school, you can still carry it and pass it to somebody else. So a vaccinated person makes no difference than an unvaccinated person when it comes to transmission. There's no difference. It doesn't make any sense. So being vaccinated is not the fix-all. It just doesn't fix it. That's a fact. I hate to say it, but it's just idiotic that people will still promote that, you know, and say, all right, well, if your kids are vaccinated, they don't have to quarantine. That's the phrase that they're saying. Doesn't make any sense, right? Because they can still catch it and they can still pass it. So why wouldn't they quarantine for 5 days like everybody else? So right there's your kind of, you know, doesn't make any sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Knox, 111 Kendall Boulevard. I saw the eyes, Mr. Stats.
Yeah, I was thinking it's a nice sweatshirt.
I just wanted to touch on what Todd brought up about the science of masking. I have had to go to a lot of OSHA classes for work. I'm around cement dust all the time. I took an OSHA silica-specific class. And to work around silica, which you can see, if you break a piece of concrete, if you cut a piece of concrete, if you mix mortar, you can see the dust. I've never seen COVID. Couldn't tell you what it looks like. To work around cement dust, you have to have a respirator with KN95 attachments to it. To wear that respirator at work all day, you have to get fit tested for the respirator to make sure that the seal is right and that you're healthy enough to wear it for your 8-hour work shift. These are toys. If I was cutting concrete and OSHA walked in and I have this on, the job's shut down. But this is enough for our kids to come here for 8 hours. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. So I think it's obvious which way I'm leaning. My whole house is leaning. I just wanted to ask, since we're talking about changing the level of testing in our school district, just on the record, does testing financially benefit our school at all? Is there any incentive to test our kids?
Is there any incentive?
Yeah, financial incentive.
No, there's a heavy burden of cost associated
It does
with
cost us and we don't get anything kicked back?
No.
Okay, I was just curious. I had no idea. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Sean Fadigan, 307 West Oakland Avenue. I've listened to each and every one of you guys tonight, and some of you guys had some really good points. There's both sides of the fence. As I hear a lot from Dr. McDowell, we follow the science. As it was brought up already by a couple different parents here, mental stats. Let's talk about those numbers. Suicide, especially with in female gender, there's been a higher rate of suicide. Depression, anxiety. These kids can't read body language. If they were to look at you, everybody's blank. We're all the same. And it's not the way to live. It's for everybody to be the same. There are religions that do that. And that's their belief, and that's why they have their own communities. Well, this is becoming more than that. It's pushing it on everybody. I really can't stress enough how damaging it is to the youth of our nation to continue this way. And I do understand the sickness. I've had it twice. Who did not get it? My son, nor my wife. in the same household. As my friend back there said, he lives in a small house in Oaklyn. No way. We all do. So there's more to it. And I understand, the science of social distancing. Okay, well, if we unmask, let's say, all right, keep your distance just a little bit. Sanitize. Wash your hands. Stay out of my space. I don't like people in my space anyway. So the further we stay away, the better. But it's becoming too much. And, as we've been here before, my child is allergy prone and so on and so forth. From the mask, he not just from the mask, but he has eczema from his other allergies. And it's becoming a huge rash on his face. And it happens with times of year, of course. Wintertime, skin's drier. And the snotty nose, he said, nosebleeds recently. He's never had nosebleeds. And it's all stemming from these things right here. So if we could come to a point, and we can all come to an agreement here, and everybody can be happy, it would be awesome. So just moving forward, I just want to say I appreciate you guys, and I hope you guys make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jerry Ezekiel, 202 Landis Avenue. That's my ride home. I know.
It depends on what you say to that right
I
now.
already ordered Grubhub. Reason I'm up here is the point was made. It was a very good point about the school basically strong-arming us to stay open, rather than us losing time with in-person sessions if we go a different route. I'm a licensed healthcare practitioner. I have multiple degrees. Contrary to what anybody who knows me would say, I'm actually a very intelligent person, educated. I know they can't believe it either. However, with all that said, why I bring that up is I have to wonder, as I've been at this meeting for the last hour, I guess, I have found myself unable to concentrate, pulling at my mask, staring at my feet, staring at the ceiling, counting the tiles. There's 720. And I can only wonder what our children would be going through at a younger age if the schools are made to stay open with the masks on, what the level of effectiveness of the education would be, given the masks that are on them, if they would be able to absorb the level of education that we're trying to give them with these masks on. Just a point to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. You're still going to take him home with you? Jury's still out, huh? Anyone else?
Hello, I'm Paulina Akers, 202 Reading Avenue. I came really late because I had my son at baseball practice. So I was listening to the meeting about the test to stay. Like I was listening to the meeting on the way here and through Bluetooth. So the test to stay, if my kid is a close contact and they're unvaccinated, they have to go to Collinswood High School to get tested in order to come to school that day of school?
No.
Oh, sorry. So I missed it. I wasn't really.
No. So when the district works through the logistics of the test to stay,
Mm-hmm.
we are going to be providing that as a service.
Okay.
The families are always welcome to get tested by their own means. They have to get tested through a healthcare provider or a proctored online test. They bring a negative PCR. That's basically like the ticket. So some families would choose to go to their own healthcare provider, which is perfectly fine. Others may not have a primary care physician that they're leveraging for this. They would be able to come through our testing center just as an option. But it wouldn't. That's not the gatekeeper. The Test to Stay program is a service for families in order to keep kids in school. So if your child was considered a close contact, operating in a Test to Stay environment, if you came on Monday and you produced the negative test for your child, you would bring that on Monday. You would bring another one on Wednesday and another on Friday. They stay in school the whole week.
Okay, so this is only for unvaccinated children, right? Vaccinated can just go to school with no tests.
As long as they are asymptomatic.
Okay, because I had the same situation. So my kids are unvaccinated. I'm vaccinated. My husband's vaccinated. I had COVID. My daughter had COVID. I'm a nurse at Cooper Hospital. I work with COVID patients. I don't know if I got it from work. I don't know if my daughter got it at school. She's outside playing with friends. She goes to parties. My kids play sports. My son wrestles. My son plays baseball. So I don't know where we got it from, right? So if my son was vaccinated, he would have been able to go to school. He tested negative. I was positive. My husband's positive. My daughter's positive. His rapid COVID was negative, so I could have sent him to school if he was vaccinated. But I ended up, he's unvaccinated, so he stayed home. He quarantined for 10 days. I do a PCR test, which was positive. So if we test these kids and they come up negative on your test to stay program, and they go to school, they could still technically be positive by a PCR test. That's not a rapid test, because rapid, like someone else was saying, rapid tests are not accurate if you're asymptomatic.
The test that we would be using with Inspired Diagnostics is a rapid PCR test. So it is a PCR test because they're leveraging it. That's why it's so costly. So the normal tests that we were doing for asymptomatic testing was $9. Rapid antigen tests were $15. These new tests, in order to provide the service for families, in order to keep kids in school, are between $20 and $22 per test. So it's a different test.
I just don't understand, vaccinated versus unvaccinated. People are saying, if you don't have any symptoms, why can't you just go to school?
So I think you bring up a very valid question, but I also want to be mindful for the community to really understand is that we as a school district do not operate like private industry, do not operate like medical facilities. We are held to a different standard. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to navigate within the rules that schools are required to operate under in order to provide the least restrictive and least damaging option to our community. So there is no perfect test. I completely agree with you. There's no perfect environment that creates zero risk. But those are the conditions that we as a school have to operate under, and what we're trying to do is just trying to add additional options for families to consider. I've heard a lot about families talking about choice. All we're trying to do is provide families just with more choices.
Yeah, I'm pro optional masking, because like I said, my kids only really wear masks in school. They go to wrestling practice, softball, dance. Well, my daughter wears a mask at dance, but that's more close contact. But they don't really wear masks anywhere else. They go to parties, they go to friends' houses. They don't wear masks with their friends, with their family. And my 5th grader does have anxiety now. He bites his nails. He's fidgety. He can't concentrate. It's really hurting these kids. So I had other stuff to say, but I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can just chime in real quick too, to the community and to everyone on the board as well. We're really talking about two issues here, right? So the one issue is what we as a community have control over in terms of decision making, which would be to either A, require masks, or B, make it optional. The other issue that may pertain to how to handle students who are vaccinated versus unvaccinated, or quarantine times, or how we handle this moving forward, that's something that is beyond our control as a community and as a district. A lot of that guidance comes from the state, from the CDC, and we don't have new guidance on that piece. So, I just, to kind of sum everything up, just wanted to, everyone to bear in mind that there's two sides to the same coin. One, for us to decide as a community how we'll handle masking, but then to bear in mind that there's certain aspects of this that we won't have control over moving forward based on what the state deems we need to follow. That's the big question. I don't want to say that the midterm elections might have something to do with it, but I'm gonna put that out there. So. Mhm. Right.
So Oaklyn is an independent district. The meetings in Oaklyn are happening way before Collingswood. We have not engaged in this discussion in Collingswood. These conversations have been happening in Oaklyn. So I just want to make sure that the needs of Oaklyn are in the hearts and minds of every board member and every district staff member, as well as our principal and our nurses. We're not looking for cookie cutter expectations, and we're not making assumptions that Oaklyn is Collingswood. So the decisions have been Oaklyn specific. We will engage in those. Well, we're connected because our middle school and our high school have shared students. So the numbers between both districts are important because we have children from Oaklyn in both of those campuses. So that's the only reason why Collingswood is even brought up in discussion.
And just for clarification, there are 615 school districts in the state of New Jersey. So if you tell me that 100 of them have gone away from the mask mandate, okay, well 450 haven't at this point in time, and I'm just throwing those numbers out there. I'm not arguing one way or the other, but just I'm sorry. Okay.
Well, I'd also want to know what the infection rates are and all of that. I mean, I don't feel comfortable going by numbers of North Jersey schools. I mean, any schools that are closer to Manhattan, Manhattan had the Omicron surge way before we did down here. I mean, it's the timing of a virus. So I just want to make that point that it's a very big state.
Interestingly enough, North Jersey now is a lower transmission rate than South Jersey. I guess it's run its course in North Jersey because it started first there. It's run its course. Now it's working its way south gradually. Yeah, Patrick.
It's not working. Anyway.
I just want to point out that you gave Dr. McDowell my microphone. Try and be more careful next month.
Dr. McDowell, when we go maskless, I'm for it. Not maskless, but like optional. When we go optional, how does that match with the mandates that were set down by the state? Is that what you're waiting for? The information as to how that will change? You haven't gotten school districts are going optional masks. How is that going to change the mandates? Because you have to follow the mandates.
So the primary concern is that if we get out in front of the state and they, for whatever reason, upon reflection of their decision, remove the political component and really go back to the guidance that they said just 7 days prior to the announcement, we don't want to have to continually backtrack or then change course based on planning. As collective districts, both of our districts for the last 2 years have not been haphazard in the implementation of new guidance. We've looked at the guidance that comes out, and generally within 7 to 10, up to 14 days, have determined what does that mean for our specific school district. How do we communicate that to families? How do we make sure that staff are aware of the new policy, and then we put it into practice? That is what we are requesting to have time to do once we receive the guidance. What he said was that he was not taking away his legal authority in order to make a change if necessary in the future, dependent on transmission rates. But the second part of what he said was that he believes that the state should not decide that school districts, based on their localities and based on local needs, should determine what makes the most sense for them.
Well, we may be talking semantics here, but mandates are what they say. Mandate is mandatory, which means you have to do it. Oh, I'm sorry. Mandate? What's unlawful? Well, never mind. I'm sorry. I don't want to get in an argument with you at this point in time. No. Okay. I'll talk to you about that after the meeting. You and I can sit and discuss that amongst ourselves. Okay, does anyone else have anything? It's a much better idea. All right, hearing no one else, we'll end the public comment portion at this point in time, and we'll go back to where the committee of the whole was. Todd? Yeah, I'd go back to 5. But Todd, did you want to do something before I get back to 5?
Yeah, so I'd still like to make that motion. And again, I've appreciated our dialogue, our conversation tonight, and I know everyone here seated at this table wants to make the right decision and is going to make a sincere decision. And you know, what I'm about to say, some may say is, well, that's stubbornness or ignorance, but you know, there's nothing further that's going to come from the CDC or the Department of Health that, in terms of masking, for me, would change my mind. So I'd still like to make the motion, given the timing that this mandate would be lifted before our March meeting. I'd like to make a motion to take a vote on that matter, if that.
Wait, back up again. You've lost me. You, what are you?
I'd like to take a motion for the board to vote on whether masks continue or remain optional. Oops, sorry. So I'd like to make a motion for the board to take a vote whether the masks remain or are optional come March 7th.
How about if you just make a motion to make masks optional or mandatory as of March 8th?
All right. Well, I would like to make a motion to make masks optional come March 7th.
Okay.
Sorry for the procedural confusion there.
It's okay. I'm having trouble with everything tonight. It's probably the mask. I can't hear you with this mask on. Is there a second? Okay, that was Amy? Okay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions on the motion?
I just have a question. Is there an option to have an optional special meeting between now and March 7th?
We can always have a special meeting. Yeah, that won't affect this. You've got a motion on the floor right now on this one. Oh, okay. Any other questions?
I'm sorry, and correct me if I'm wrong. This is the motion that Mr. Schaefer would like to take a vote to end the mask mandate and make masks optional effective March 7th, 2022. Is that what I heard? Okay. I tried to summarize it into one.
So to clarify, to make sure we're all on the same page, a yes vote would be masks become optional March 7th, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that's the
And a no
current
vote
motion.
would say, no, we're not making it
Correct.
Correct.
at this time for the vote.
Correct.
One more question. What if anything changes between now and March 7th? Any guidance, then would we have a special meeting to change? I mean, if guidance from the state changes.
Same
between
answer.
now
We can always have a special meeting. You know, if you go optional and the infection rates spike, you can have a special meeting for that too, to talk about putting masks back on.
The next meeting, since the next meeting's a week later, 2 weeks later or something, isn't it?
Next meeting, I believe, is March 15th.
Yes.
A week after.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's a week later, so.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there any other questions on the motion? Hearing none, on a roll call.
Mrs. Riley. Mrs. Faupel. Mrs. Butchko.
No.
Mr. Taby.
Yes?
Mrs. Ezekiel. Mrs. Marmion. Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
Mr. Stotts.
Yes.
5-4. It carries.
Wait, before you get too excited about this, we don't have 9 members here tonight.
Chris is a yes. 5-3, I'm sorry. I had a line through
5-3, yes? 5-3, yes? Okay, good. Okay, now you can applaud. Not too much, don't get carried away. Okay, back to the meeting. Section 5 are the important dates coming up, which you can peruse at your leisure there. I do want to mention the PTA talent show, though, although maybe Denise will mention that later. But that's coming up, so she'll tell you a little bit more about that. And the next board meeting, as I say, is March 15th. I hope to see all you guys here then. Look forward to crowd. It's a mandate. Okay. Section 6, approval of minutes of the, of the January meeting. Is there a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Are there any corrections or additions to them? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. No unfinished business. The public comment. Does anybody have anything other than masks that they would like to talk about? Okay, we'll have another section. Same routine, same rules. 5 minutes or less. Come up, give us your name and address, and keep it to 5 minutes. Right now, yeah.
Have to say my name again. Paulina Akers, 202 Reading Avenue. I just have a question about track and field day. I know we're like a separate school, but the same district as Collingswood. I reached out to somebody that runs track and field day over in Collingswood, but he really couldn't give me an answer on why our school can't be involved in Collingswood's track and field day. I just thought it'd be something nice for the kids that are in 4th and 5th grade to be included with those kids from those elementary schools before they go over to middle school. Because we don't really have a track and field day here. It's just like something fun, nothing really competitive.
We used to have a track and field day. I don't know what we called it, but
It's just, it's like a fun day. They don't really, and it's like a small school, so there's nothing really, we have a small 4th grade. The 5th grade, there's like 28 kids total. I was told that transportation will be an issue, and there's some legalities, but I don't know. Dr. McDowell, if you can answer that for me, why we couldn't join on?
I would encourage you to reach out to the school. I mean,
To our school?
Yeah, to
Okay.
your school specifically about track and field day. I know that the children in Collingswood, they have a whole army of volunteers, and they just walk.
Yeah, and we could do that. I mean,
but
it's
from
they walk to middle school. Parents could volunteer, walk over with the kids.
That would be a bigger
It's a-
discussion at the school level.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay. So I reached out to somebody that ran it last year, and she directed me to Mark Wiltsey, which is the one that runs track and field day over in Collingswood.
So Mr. Wilsey was the primary contact in terms of logistics, but the Collingswood PTAs, each of the PTA leadership teams, they actually hosted, ran, and volunteered to run track and field day last year.
So if our PTA got together and with their PTA, yeah, because I pretty much got like a run around. He reached out to somebody, couldn't get a straight answer from me, and just told me that transportation and legal issues was why we couldn't get involved. But he thinks it's a great idea, and in the future we should try to get them together. But I just feel like our kids have already missed out. Like, my son hasn't had a normal year since second grade, you know? He's in 5th grade, going to middle school next year.
Ms. Bolden, can you connect the PTA president with Mr. Wilsey? And I'll
Yeah.
send Mark a message.
Yeah, just remember that there's parent A is going to Mark Wiltsey and making the request. It's not the Oakland PTA making the request. It's not the Oakland Board of Education making the request. You'll get a different answer.
I wasn't making a request. I was told to reach out to him because.
And the easiest thing to do was to blow you off.
But I even asked him. I said, should I reach out to Ms. Bolden? And he said to
He
wait.
prob-
He was going to get
he
an
probably
answer from
doesn't
me.
know, and I don't know whether that's a viable option or not at this point in time.
It just doesn't seem like it would be that hard to do. I mean, we can raise money, make them T-shirts, and then if parents could volunteer to help out.
A date for the field day?
I don't know the date.
Do you know the
It's
date?
usually the last week of school, but I don't know.
Okay.
I just, like, my husband went to Collingswood. He remembers all of that stuff. He remembers he went to Tatum. Tatum went against Garfield and this and that. And it's just, like, something that...
I went to Sharp School, and we were the best at that point in time.
So, like, yeah, like, so it could be like, all right, Oakland beat Tatum in the 400, whatever, you know? Like, kids remember that kind of stuff. And I feel like our kids need something like that. It'll be a nice way to end the year. But we don't do that, though, anymore. Oh. We are going to have one gold night?
Yeah,
I don't know. I just wanted
we'll-
something nice for our kids to do. Like I
Yeah.
said, our kids, their mental health is suffering. They're not, outside of here, they're fine. But, like, when they're in school with their...
We'll look into it.
I'll just chime in and say that I'm certain we can get volunteers from this
Yeah.
class of parents to help. So maybe that we can do like permission slips or something. But I think the question right now is just would Collingswood welcome us? You know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think so.
But have you had blue and gold night since the 6th grade? Okay. Okay. I just don't remember. All right. I don't know. There's like legalities and transportation. Transportation, we could walk the kids over. I don't know. I think so too. And we can do some type of fundraiser. Like, I know we're all like just talking, but
Okay. You'll get the ball rolling with the PTA?
Paulina, I'll chat, like if we can talk about it at the next PTA meeting, and
Yeah.
then we'll try to connect with If Collingswood PTA is running the field day, then I'll help to try to connect.
I'm just surprised that Mark didn't tell me that. He reached out. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, now, just bear in mind, too, that Oakland is an independent district. We're not part of Collingswood.
That's what my
So
that
the
was
fact
gonna
that
be my-
Collingswood does it doesn't mean that they're going to accept Oakland to do it.
Yeah, so that was my next question. Where are we different? Are we different in an elementary school level, but the same middle school and high school? Or
No.
I don't know where we're the same and where we're different. Like, what's different?
Well,
what's
we
the
run
same?
the Oakland Board of Education runs the Oakland district, whether that we're sending the kids here to go to school or
Yeah.
whether we're sending the kids to Collingswood to go to school. They're still our students.
Yeah.
Okay. So the question is only, who's doing the educating. In the case of middle school and high school, the answer is Collingswood.
Okay.
And the question of preschool and elementary, it's Oakland.
They invite us over to their pool party though, with the elementary school kids. So like they do that for them. So that's something like they're welcoming us to go to this pool party where all the kids could hang out at the pool and meet each other and.
They might welcome you to take part in field day too. I don't know, but we're going to find out for you.
And then. Yeah.
Well, we could always invite Collingswood to our pool. Oh, that's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
We don't have a pool anymore. Sorry.
Oh my gosh. We can invite him to our field day.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, and I was told by Mark Wiltie that the gym teachers do the track and field day over in Collingswood. He didn't say anything about PTA, so I don't know if it is PTA or if it is the gym teachers that facilitate
well,
it.
we've got to start somewhere. So Denise is going to see that we get that
Awesome.
that started.
All right, cool. Yeah, because I couldn't get nowhere. I tried.
Yeah.
Jim, 216, Jim Ivy, 216 Reading Avenue, Oakland. I was just a couple questions. First one is, am I the only one that thinks that SEL takes away from the academics in the time frame that they're allowed to learn? Like, we're not adding something to the curriculum and extending the time that they're in school. We are replacing academic time with SEL. Now, I understand that there are families that, or kids that don't have good families and have the help that some parents are able to offer. I was one of those kids growing up. So special ed class it was for me. But that's what we had back then, not SEL. And then the other thing is there any kind of repercussions if I catch a teacher pushing political ideas onto my children? I came in to meet one of the teachers at one point, and we had asked them about critical race theory and what they would be teaching our kids. Because truthfully, I don't really understand it fully, right? Basically I was told, I said, I loved learning about Martin Luther King and the Underground Railroad and all these things growing up. I was really inspired by it, and I'm from Texas, I was told, well, you live in a town that's mostly white. And I didn't really understand. I was offended by that. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so does that mean that you have to triumph and make sure that my kid learns stuff that you think we're not teaching them? I think that was inappropriate, and that kind of goes with what we're afraid of, right? So I have a 16-year-old that has been completely, it feels like, brainwashed. Like, she is very difficult to even talk to her about something that she doesn't agree with. She has no open dialogue with this stuff. She completely shuts down, and it's just like, I don't even want to talk about it. And it could be something simple. It's not even about her. And then we have a 9-year-old that we're trying to prevent that from happening. We want her to be open-minded, and hear other people's opinions or how they feel to try to understand where they're coming from. And we didn't really push that on our 16-year-old daughter. That was our first daughter. And I think that we failed her in that aspect. But we learned from our mistakes, and we have had to sit down with our 9-year-old daughter and tell her, look, you cannot trust every single teacher or every person with authority. They can be wrong. And I have sat down and I told her, you don't trust anybody just because they're a teacher or they have authority, because they can be wrong. And that's a shame that I have to sit there and tell my daughter that. And I said, that doesn't mean you can't trust them, but you always be objective. And that's where we're at today. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, if you have questions, now I know neither Collingswood nor Oaklyn teach CRT. That's not happening. If there's a problem with a teacher, you should be discussing it with the superintendent. If it's Oaklyn, discuss it with Mrs. Bolden. If it's Collingswood, talk to the principal, either the middle school or the high school. Okay, Lou.
Lou Bunnius, 103 Johnson Avenue. Back in the fall, I made a presentation here. Matter of fact, what that gentleman was just talking about, critical race theory and Project 1619. Now, I spoke with one of the teachers in Collingswood, one of the history teachers. I think it was Oliveri.
Mr. Oliveri is the supervisor of humanities, so English and social studies.
Okay, well, that's who it was, anyhow. And we had a nice discussion, and he said it wasn't being taught. But it looks like that's not totally true. So, can we propose a resolution of some sort that the board here, and maybe even the Collingswood board, puts out and says, we will not, specifically not, teach critical race theory or the 1619 project? Yes? No?
Well, I'm not sure I want to.
I mean, I can propose a resolution. Can I?
Well, no.
I can't?
No.
Okay. Well, then, how about you folks?
Well, we approve the curriculum every year. And if CRT is not part of the curriculum, it's not approved to be taught in high school. Now,
But it is.
Well,
The gentleman just said it.
I'm not
He
sure.
said his daughters were getting indoctrinated.
I'm not sure that's exactly what he meant. I'm not sure that's exactly what he said, Lou.
Well,
but again,
okay.
the problem is if there's a problem, you have to go to the principal. So if it's Collingswood, go to the high school or the middle school principal.
see, the
whoever
thing
that
is, also, Mr. Oliveri said the same thing. He says, you can't keep track of all the teachers, what they're actually telling kids in the class, unless you got a video camera. And that's probably why a lot of parents have found out about this. Because during the COVID problem, and they had virtual learning, guess what? All of those classroom instructions were coming into the house. So all the parents were seeing what's being taught to their kids, which is not the American way, as far as I can tell.
Well, I'm going to give you the same answer that I gave the last one, that if there's a problem, go to the principal. If you don't like what's being taught, you don't like how it's being taught, start with the principal, or start with the teacher, actually. But
Well,
if
I
the
don't have
teacher's who
any
you're
kids in
complaining
school
about,
anymore. You know that, Bill.
well, unfortunately, I don't either.
But it's just, it's just I feel concerned that what's happening to the kids in school today.
Well,
so
what you should do is take one of the videos and take it to. Well, it's probably not Jen. It's probably whoever the. Jenna. Yeah. Is he still there? Okay. Yeah. Well, he's moving. At the end of the year, he's going to be principal of Zane North. But Matt Jenna would be the guy that you start with there. Show him what you got. Tell him what your concerns are.
I don't have any videos. I don't have any of that. I mean,
well, you're telling me that
it's
this
just
is
something
happening,
to
but it's
make
hearsay.
the public and you folks aware of what's going on.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. Thank you. I'm aware. I'm aware. Anyone else?
Rick Maloney, 229 Manheim Ave. So just let you all know, just because it's my first time appearing here, I watch you guys all the time on YouTube. I haven't missed a meeting since COVID started. Same thing with the council meetings. And I just wanted to bring up to this board what Mr. McDowell brought up is the only people testing right now is the student athletes at Collinsville. Okay, well this board needs to know, our students go there, and that they're the only ones being tested, the unvaccinated students. That is modern day segregation. I don't know, you can argue it all you want. There's no other schools doing it. It's prevented nothing, and they're targeting just one group, the athletes. The most healthiest, this is what drives me crazy, because you got the wrestlers, you got my daughter, for instance, an unvaccinated student who's completely shredded is considered unhealthy. An obese student at the high school who's vaccinated is considered healthy. It's disgusting. It needs to end. No other schools are doing it. It's preventing nothing. And you know what I mean? Mr. Stotts, you knew I was at that meeting, back in the fall. And I still want you to bring that up to that board, and you know what I mean, because you're our representative, and I want this whole board behind that as well. Because it's segregation. They're segregating the group of student athletes. You want to test for unvaccinated, it needs to be all or none. All right? Because, I can't even believe this is even allowed to still go on. And who's making them recommendations? They just need to, I would have a few words for that, but you know what I mean? It's a public meeting. But, yeah, I would like to. That's the way I feel, and there's a lot of parents that feel that way, and they all complain, you know what I mean? But nobody's got, you know what I mean? Nobody's got the heart or the balls to come here and speak about it. All they do is complain on Facebook, or complain amongst each others, and to let you know too. So I was at the wrestling match the other day where they won the the sectional title, and you got two of the mask police there, telling all the students put on your mask, right? But then guess what? They're at Mulligan celebrating, which they should do. You know what I mean? They should be celebrating with their coaches and everything. Maskless, having a good time. Well, guess what? All our kids are masked. And this is what this whole meeting was about. So there's a lot of hypocrisy going on as well with all this. So you know what I mean? It's just time to move on. And let's bring that up at the next council meeting too. All right? Thank you.
Okay. So noted. Anyone else? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on with superintendent's report.
Okay. Section 8.01 is the enrollment report. January of 2021, enrollment was 274. January of 2022 was 265. And the report is attached for board member review. 8.02 is the school safety drill report. That is also attached for January of 2022. No suspensions, no reports for anti-bullying, and the child study team report for January 2022 is attached 8.05.
Okay, thank you, Dr. McDowell. The business administrator's report. Mrs. Coleman.
This evening, I have for your approval the January 2022 monthly transfers, your January 2022 Secretary and Treasurer's report, and your cash reports, a listing of your purchase orders for the month of February, and a list of the warrants to be paid tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Finance, buildings, and grounds. Todd.
Items 10.01 through 10.06 are the items that were just presented by Ms. Coleman. Item 10.07, the interlocal purchasing system membership. Move on the recommendation that we move on the recommendation of the superintendent to approve that we join the. Sorry, item 10.08, increase in the state aid security grant. Move on the recommendation to accept the increase in state aid security and grant funds to increase our budgeted revenue and expenditure accounts by $20,000. We're going to be looking into some more fobs and security cameras with that. Item 10.09, move on the recommendation of the superintendent to continue our participation in the semi-Medicaid program for the 22-23 school year and continue with the program requirements. Item 10.10 is a use of facilities request by the travel basketball to approve the Oakland Cougars Panthers Travel Basketball League Class 2 for use of the gym May 1st to June 13th, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 5 to 9. And those are the items.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Is there a motion to approve items 10.01 through 10.10? Okay, moved and seconded. Are there any questions?
I just have a question. Could you just explain a little bit more what 10.09, the semi-Medicaid program, is?
That's actually, and it's unusual that the state's making me put this on the agenda. You guys have never seen it before, but we participate in the semi-Medicaid program. It's a mandated state program. Children that receive certain services through the Child Study Team, OT, PT, some nursing services. Our CST members actually have to go in and log those hours and provide proof of their certificates. And I guess the state kicks it back to the federal government to get money from the Fed for those children that are Medicaid eligible. So they basically force the school districts to be a part, and then the state gets money back from the Fed, and then we get a little bit of revenue back into our budget to put towards the Child Study Team. So this year there's a minimum number of children based on your district size in order to participate. Oakland, we fell under our number. I think our number is 40 children who are eligible. We fell under 40 this year, but I'm not going to come out of the program and then go back in. So because we fell under that, I had to publicly ask for your approval to continue to run the program, or we would have to apply to the state for a waiver. So.
Perfect. Thank you for explaining that. I
No
appreciate
problem.
that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Beth Ann. On a roll call, please.
Mrs. Riley? Mrs. Falpel?
Yes.
Mrs. Butchko?
Yes.
Mr. Tavy?
Yes.
Mrs. Ezekiel? Mrs. Marmion? Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Stotts?
Yes. Okay, section 11, curriculum. Chris, you're up.
11.01 is the field trips. There are none at this time. 11.02 is to approve Jennifer Yoder as a part-time nurse. 11.03 is the elementary curriculum development. Listed will be curriculum together. The update is what you already had. 11.04 is to approve student teacher field experience. During, I believe it is. 11.05 is to approve substitute teachers. Yes, we have a meeting on that. And 11.06, there are no travel concerns for the
Okay, thanks, Chris. Is there a motion to approve items, turned it too soon, 10.02 to 11.02 to 11.05?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any questions on any of them? On a roll call.
Mrs. Riley? Mrs. Falpel?
Yes.
Mrs. Butchko?
Yes.
Mr. Tavy?
Yes.
Mrs. Ezekiel? Mrs. Marmion?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Stotts?
Yes. Okay, section 12, school community relations and policy. Denise.
Hi, so this is a new committee for the board. So we had our first meeting this month. We went through what we hope to talk about for the year, strengthening our relationship with different community groups as well as the borough and the police. Also, our committee will be talking about the strategic planning that's going to be happening. So we decided to move the liaison reports that are usually earlier in the meeting to our committee. So do you want me to read? Should I read Teresa's report for OEF, or should Teresa read? It's a procedural question.
I would assume you read, and then if anybody has any questions, then Teresa obviously can answer.
Therese was wonderful enough to send her reports in advance, unlike me, who did not. So I apologize for that. So for the Oakland Education Foundation, they met on February 10th and include our new volunteer, Bob Fink, who used to be a member of this board, the Foundation discussed revisiting the funds that were raised for technology during COVID. So there's $9,706. So we need to, or OEF needs to get with the administration about making a check. The foundation discussed the next fundraisers, which is Gertrude Falk Spring Sale, also a letter campaign to local businesses, and a table at the PTA Spring Fling. More on that coming. I'm going to look into creating a website, funding teacher grants, and giving a scholarship to a graduating senior. Next meeting is to be determined. For the PTA liaison report, PTA met on February 1st. The blood drive that was scheduled in January was canceled due to the snow, but it has been rescheduled for March 26th. Last weekend, Peace Love Pickles hosted a fundraiser for the PTA, which raised $175. Sorry. There is a virtual talent show coming up on, the Bingo Family Fun Night was scheduled in January. It is being rescheduled. I do not have any date for that yet. There is a virtual family reading experience being planned for March. And the exciting news, after a 2-year hiatus, the Spring Fling is back this year, so that would be held on Saturday, May 14th. There is a very active group of 5th grade parents that are helping to fundraise and plan promotion activities for the 5th grade class. It'll be moving on to the middle school. So one of the things that we talked about was get back to that. Therese and myself will be leading the PTA nominating committee, which will seek nominations for open PTA officer positions. So this year there are 4. Our president is resigning, so we'll be looking for a new president, vice president, treasurer, and recording secretary. And the next meeting is Tuesday, March 1st at 6:30, which is a change from the 7:30 start time. Yep.
Okay.
LMASAC, my computer's moving slow. LMASAC met on January 24th. Funding has been submitted for 2023. And I'm sure we'll be talking with Collingswood to see how they're currently running assemblies with COVID restrictions. They reviewed the 2022 budget, discussed needing to adjust plans for upcoming gym nights. April Marino shared plans about Week of Kindness, which is currently this week. Started discussions of bringing back the Oaklyn Color Run fundraiser in the fall. And the next meeting is February 28th. Before we move on to Collingswood, I just wanted to share real quickly, I don't have a formal report, but the Special Education Parent Advisory Group met on Tuesday, February 8th. So again, I mentioned at our last meeting that I think it would be nice if our board had a representative for that group. I attended the meeting. I don't need to be the liaison, but I just wanted to report since I did attend. I don't know that I can attend every month, but so it is a new group. The CPAC happens all the time, but this is like a new re-energized group of parents. And it was really nice because there was close to 20 people on the Zoom, which included parents and staff. They discussed we're doing a parent partnership project where they partner perhaps a parent that is newer to special education with someone that has a little more experience, sort of like a mentor, to help them kind of navigate the system and then help the people with a little more experience build confidence. There was a lot of enthusiasm for that idea. And quite a few parents, kind of like the theme was that quite a few parents felt like they needed extra support in the middle school years, either going to middle school or their students in middle school. So that was just something they talked about. So I just wanted to share that. And if anyone else wants to attend the next meeting, it's Tuesday, March 8th at 6:30 via Zoom. Yeah. Yeah, it looks like they're wanting to start meeting every month, the second Tuesday of every month. Great. Perfect.
Just note, the second Tuesday of every month are committee meetings.
This starts at 6:30, so it'll be after curriculum.
All right, Bill, I'm going to kick it to you for an update on Collingswood.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, Collingswood meeting on January 24th. Dr. McDowell gave an update on the COVID protocols at that point in time. Principal search for a middle school. Oh, the principal search for him. There's going to be a middle school meeting to discuss that on the 10th, February 10th. So you're probably not interested in that at this point in time. Middle school, at the middle school auditorium, which is the big room so they can spread out. There were public comments on mask, quarantine, extra help to catch up on learners that have a problem being where they should be. They approved a shared service contract with the borough to provide janitorial services for the borough's nice, shiny new public safety building. They approved a revised agreement with Oaklyn for space. That's the rental of the preschool classrooms that they lease. They approved a revised agreement with Oaklyn for tech services, administration, and preschool staff. They approved high school field trips for the band. They approved a contract with Camden County College for the High School Plus program, where the kids can earn college credit, I guess it is, for classes that they take at Collingswood. And they approved increasing the minimum wage to $13 an hour for those that are being paid on an hourly basis. And the old minimum was $12, so they went up to $13, which is they're looking out for your tax dollars. And that's it. Any questions? Okay. Policies. That's part of your committee too, right?
It is, yes.
Okay.
So for consideration tonight, there are a number of policies up for first reading. I'll let y'all read the list. I know we've all read the policies, but given the time, I don't think I need to read one each individually. And that is it.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve items 12.10 through 12.05? That's not right. 12.01 through 12.05.
So moved.
I don't think there's anything on here to be voted on.
Oh, nothing on here to be voted
No,
on?
it's just reports right now.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's only
Yeah.
first reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just reading the part that says
Yeah,
approval.
sorry, it was a typo. I didn't catch that.
Okay, on the first reading, I have a question on one of them. I'm not sure which one it is now, but it's for the concussion protocols, and the gym teacher or the trainer that they have had a question on part of it.
Yes.
Is it appropriate to not approve that at this point in time and wait and see what happens with that? Question for you. I forget which one it is.
On 2431.4.
Prevention and treatment, there you go. Sports-related concussions and head injuries.
When the policies came in, I sent them to the correct people who would understand. Carl's question was just, I think, in the second paragraph of the policy, it mentioned that after a concussion event, they would need a letter from their doctor clearing them to come back. It said doctor or other medical professional, and he just kind of had a question like, what would that mean? A nurse? Could he let the child back in? And it was he had a question. The state has not responded as to, it just says, has to be cleared by a medical professional.
Okay, this is only the first
Right.
reading anyway, so it won't become official until we have the second reading.
So it's kind of vague as who is the medical professional clearing
Yeah,
the
hopefully he gets
child prior to a concussion event.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay. Section 13, no HIB reports, but is there a motion to approve that there are no HIB reports? Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? So moved. And public participation. Public is dwindling a little bit at this point in time, but Either of you guys want to come back and say anything? No? Okay. Okay, boy, I hate to say this, but is there a motion to adjourn?
So, second.
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Meeting's adjourned. Thanks for coming, guys. Okay. Where'd my friend go that was going to discuss mandate with me?
I was with you on that.
Darn.